The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Wake up! Wake up!
Oh, it's time?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Whew. I might have dozed off there, man. I'm sorry,
We need to
guys.
get you a device, man.
I need a couple of them, I think.
Well, welcome, my good friend, Dr. Mark Murphy. I'm Dr. Guy Yatros. Thank you all for taking this evening with us. We're coming to you from across the country. I think, Mark, where do you say you're in Las Vegas?
I'm in Las Vegas.
Wow, I'm a little jealous there. I think I might like to come visit you, but I'm down here in Florida. Florida's not bad either, I suppose.
35 degrees this morning. 35 degrees with a high of 55. So you're not missing anything.
That's wow. That's
I've been in meetings all day anyhow, so for sure you haven't missed anything.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to meet with us tonight. I know it's the first of the year and everybody's got a lot going on. I see some friends on here we'll shout out to in a little while. But first of all, I want to introduce Dr. Mark Murphy to join us here. We've done a couple of these together now. I've known Mark since for about 20 years from the Pankey Institute. Go way back to where you were my mentor there. And as I told you last time we did one of these, it's an honor to get to share the evening with you and to talk to you with you about sleep and talk to these people about what's going on in the digital world. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us.
Well, thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to do these programs with you. I think when you and I are sitting here chatting, or when you and Richard are chatting, or when Richard and I are chatting, it's just so comfortable. It's just such an easy conversation to have, and we're all trying to elevate the sleep curriculum and the sleep model that we have in dentistry. So it feels good.
Well, fantastic. I see some questions already coming in. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping for just a couple of minutes. Promise won't take too much time with that. If you have questions, we had several hundred people sign up for this tonight, so we will get to all your questions. Type them in the question box, and we have our whole member support team from DS3. They'll be answering some. Mark and I will answer the others, and anything that's left unclear at the end, we'll stay on as long as needed to get your questions.
Absolutely.
So go ahead and type them in.
Absolutely.
We can't unmute everyone though because it'll turn into chaos. And you will get CE for this. It should be in your whatever email that you signed up with. It'll go back to that email within 48 hours. If for some reason you can't find it, check your junk folder. If you can't find it after that, then contact us. But it should be there. So a couple other announcements. We're doing. Thank you. Another thanks goes out to you, Mark, for doing some courses with us this year. We've got our schedule up through and pretty busy up until the fall there. I've got the first 3 or 4 there listed that we're doing. We're doing 2-day courses, hands-on a lot on the second day, a lot of implementation focused courses. I think one of the things that the reason I'm excited to have you on board with this is you share our belief that if someone's going to take the time out of their schedules, travel, what have you, spend a day and a half, we want them to be able to go back Monday and start doing some of this in their practice.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's what you're going to get in these courses. It's real.
You can't do that with just a weekend lecture. You've got to get the hands-on. You see somebody take a bite, you've got to actually take the bite, take the impression, make a morning occlusal guide. You've got to actually walk through those steps. I think it's great, the kind of curriculum you've got. It's fantastic.
You can see the other dates off to the left. We'll throw this up on the end, but if you decide you want to come to them, we do some home monitoring, we do some hands-on, a full couple-day course, and just type in course, and that'll just give you a discount. You can select which one you want to go to later, but that'll secure a discount for you. And I want to talk about what we're doing next. We have a whole webinar series, and Rich and I are going to be talking about which devices to do and which ones work best for us. And we have a handful of them that really, of all of our patients, these devices were the ones that we will do on the vast majority of them. And so that'll be February 11th. And then we're going to talk about telemedicine.
That's great. You got Jadip there, right?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
He's going to be talking about this. It'll be primarily him speaking, I suppose, because he's certainly the expert. Has been around a long, long time. Most of you all know. And so that's March 10th. These are on Tuesday nights as well. So if you signed up for this, you should get an email for those, and we'll bring it up at the end again. So that's exciting. And then later on, we'll talk about the symposium. I don't want to fill up too much of anyone's time. The reason I put this in here, this is something, Mark, you embrace. We've been talking about the 4 pillars of dental sleep. If you have systems to screen your patients, to get them tested, how to treat them, which devices to use, and how to get paid for those, and team members to help you with those systems, you'll be successful. And I think today's format, we're going to kind of build on this. And that's what we do at DS3. Our DS3 team's answering your questions here. So if you have any questions and you just want some answers that we don't get to tonight, or if you want to know what we can do for you, just type in consult at any time tonight, and we will answer specific questions. Our team members will meet with you even if it's not related to tonight's subject. So,
Guy, when you were talking about the 4 pillars, I have to mention something that was kind of interesting in the conversation we had today. We were talking about how efficacy times compliance, or efficacy times adherence, really was how effective a treatment was. And we were talking, of course, about obstructive sleep apnea. But then the subject changed just a little bit, and I made the point that that's the same true with when you have systems in place. So if you have systems, that's fantastic. And then if you utilize those systems, it creates an effectiveness level. So the same thing, you could have a system like CPAP, works 100% of the time. But if you don't use it, doesn't matter how efficient the system is. So that's what I like about your 4 pillars. You've got these great systems in place. We use all of them, so I love doing that. And then at the end of the day, because we use all of them, it gives us a higher level of effectiveness in dental sleep medicine. I told you before we went on the air, I spent a little bit of time this afternoon jumping online, a couple of patients, texting them, having some calls, stuff popping up in my inbox, my DS3 software. So it just makes my day so seamless. It's easy. Appreciate it.
Well, that's fantastic. And I want to compliment. We got several of our member support team on here, and what they do, not only do they do a good job of helping you learn the system, they kind of walk a fine line between persistence and annoyance. When someone signs up for our DS3 system, they will contact you. They'll be like your personal trainer, trying, hey, have you done this? Have you done this? Here's your next step, to really help you engage and use the system, like you said, because a system's great, but you've got to utilize it. And we push you in as much as we feel comfortable into the utilization. I think that's one of the reasons we have so many members that do so well. So thanks for saying that. And we're gonna kind of build on these 4 pillars, and I'm excited about this webinar, because when I talked with you, Mark, I learn a lot from doing these talks, because sometimes I have all these slides and feel like I want to cram all this stuff down the attendees who are on here through their computers, and we don't have a ton of slides here. I think we're going to really just kind of have a conversation about what has changed today in dental sleep in 2020. And I'm excited about that. I think it'll allow us to answer some more questions. We don't have a really stringent agenda that we've got to hit all these points. And that's one thing I think you do really well. And I'm excited to do this with you.
You are so right. When you and I were putting together this program, and I sent you the slides, you sent back to me, you said, are you sure that's all the slides you have? Remember that?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah. I said, Guy, I've worked with you several times, and I can just imagine you and I sitting, having a beer someplace, having a conversation about screening, testing, treating, and billing. What would that sound like? We would have no problem filling 2 or 3 hours, spending afternoon all day. We could take a weekend and talk about this stuff. And so if we limit ourselves to at least a conversation about the changes and the impact that we have with going much more digital than we used to be, that would still give us a lot of fodder for conversation to fill 45 or 50 minutes of the time that we've got. So I thought if we just kept it simple, had some slides that just came up, had a conversation, people could take away whatever they wanted and leave behind whatever they didn't. And not everybody's going to be digital in each of these categories. Right. Maybe they'll be partially digital in one or fully digital in another. That's okay. I take analog impressions right now. I'm waiting for my new scanner to be delivered, and then I'll be going digital. But till I do, I'm okay. So I've got an analog step there.
Okay.
I'm not embarrassed about it. It's fine. Works great. It's just the way it is. So everybody's going to find their own peace of mind in that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And digital, I think one of the challenges with this is all these things require change. And I think before we kind of get into the details of this, I remember my first experience, what I would say something extremely digital, was digital x-rays. And I was one of the first offices to have that. God, it's been almost 20 years ago. I remember the sensors were $18,000 a piece. My monitors were $1,800 a piece. I had touchscreen monitors, and I paid all this money, well into 6 figures, to digitize my office. No one around had it. This is great. And my team kept taking regular x-rays and developing them. And I'd be like, I spent all this money. And so I want to, at the get-go say, ultimately we're better off with the digital. But once I started doing it, it was great. But there's a learning curve to some of this stuff. And you've got to accept that it takes longer at first, and there's some out of your comfort zone. So what my solution finally was, I took the processor, is that what it's called? The thing we used to put the x-rays in? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Processor, I don't remember what it's called anymore. I took it home, stuck it in my garage. I said, well, you can't develop x-rays here anymore. You're going to have to use the new systems. And you know what? In a month's time, they were thanking me for it. This is so much faster. We were doing FMXs quicker. I was seeing things on X-rays that I couldn't see before. I was having patient interaction.
Absolutely.
Being able to show them patient education and teaching them as we would co-discover what was going on in their mouths much easier. So understand digital in most ways is going to make your life better, but there's a little bit of a learning curve to most of these things, and you just got to set yourself up for that, and then you're going to be really happy that you did.
I totally agree. We've all got some sort of a journey or story that we can tell about going digital and how difficult it was and challenging. But I remember in our own practice going with digital. Back then it was just practice management software and how we kept an analog schedule. And then we started to have differences between the analog schedule and the digital schedule. And it just got so confusing. Finally, one day we just threw out the book.
Yeah.
And just like you said, fortunately I did it with something. Practice management software is probably a little bit less expensive than 6 figures, but once we threw out the book, it got really easy. So this is probably a great place to start, because if we're looking at how do we screen patients, and so we've got 180,000 dentists in the country, 150,000 of them GPs. Everybody's supposed to be screening according to the ADA. How do you screen? And so we've got things like the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, you've got the Thornton Scale, you've got the Berlin, you've got the Stop Bang, you've got so many different pieces, but understand that the goal, the objective of that screening process is to get a patient who you suspect is at risk for obstructive sleep apnea to move through to the next step. Whatever the next step is, next step could be testing, next step could be referral. We're not going to worry about that till we get to the testing part. So, what we've got a picture of up here on the screen is you've got a sleep screening questionnaire that's available in a software modality. So, before I had your software, we would literally sit down with a patient and we'd have an intake form that we gotten from our dentist. I work probably about 60% of my patients come from other dentists and 40% come from physician referrals. Physician referrals were usually coming in. They already had a script.
Right.
And they already had a sleep test, so we were good to go. And sometimes we'd still have a discussion about stuff, especially sleep apnea, because they weren't always well informed. But we didn't have to go through this kind of screening test. The rest, they were kind of pre-screened at the referring dentist that we taught them, and it was always manual. They were doing an Epworth Sleepiness Scale and maybe a Stop Bang. So if you could talk a little bit about, and you can see how neat this is when you see this arrow and you see the colors, because you don't have to be very smart to look at that and say green is good, red is bad, and yellow is I'm in flux somewhere. So how did you all develop this particular thing? Because I think the arrow in the direction you're moving in, that's also positive. I mean, it's moving towards bad. And so as you go from left to right, you're getting worse. So what a great screener y'all have got. So how'd y'all develop that kind of thing?
Well, first of all, the questions that we asked were validated questions. What we did, so we didn't invent some questionnaire, and I don't think you got to reinvent that wheel. And there's a lot of other things I want to talk about when it comes to this. I mean, there's, everything from your lab, Snore lab apps that people are using, and their Google devices. I mean, what you said, I think, is the most important. The whole goal here is to quickly identify people. You need a system in your office to where you can walk in and do a screening and say, this person's at higher risk than that person for airway disorders. That's the first step. But what we did, and what I like about our system and whatever system you implement, is the patient needs to kind of be interactive with it, and the system kind of lets them know they're at risk. And for some reason, and this is really disheartening a little bit, but when the computer tells the patient you're at risk for something, that sometimes means more than me, the dentist, saying, hey, you're at risk. They just, oh, wow, it comes up on the screen. So the main thing that we did that I think works well is when the patient interacts, you can see on the screen here, low risk. Well, if the patient's input as they go through the questionnaire puts them at high risk, where you're going to get a red arrow on the far right, and that's going to say high risk. And if the patient's holding that in their hand, and then we come in and go, okay, thank you, thanks for filling that out. Let's move on to something else, and maybe don't even address it. What do? They go, what? Wait, hold on. What does this mean? They usually start asking questions, and that's what we want them to do. We want them to ask questions, and then they're ready to hear the answer, as opposed to just, hey, look, you're at high risk. You may have apnea. Let's go get you a sleep test. It makes it very interactive.
Isn't it incredible that a computer, a software program, an algorithm, or something outside of the relationship you have with the patient can be the thing that tells us something's good or bad? And so we take the validation or the verification of a third party like that, a computer telling us that, yeah, you're at risk, rather than the dentist asking those questions. I think it's more powerful to see this on a graph, see this on a tablet or something like that in the office, than it is to see a piece of paper that I'm administering, that I'm asking and answering the questions, I'm tallying up the totals and telling them what it means. It's more important that this third party tells them they're at risk for obstructive sleep apnea. I really like that.
Yeah, and the other thing we want to do is we want to track that so that, our software tracks who's at high risk so we can come back and have discussions if they don't immediately agree to things. But there's other some questions are coming in. We're going to get to all these, and I see our team's answering a lot of them, so thank you, member support team from DS3 answering these. And yes, we're going to get to scanners and some other things. But what other things can we talk about here? I mean, there's apps called Snore Lab. I mean, a lot of patients are downloading that. You got the husband who, I don't have a problem, and the wife's like, you're keeping me up all night. Well, there you go. It's I haven't logged on in a while. Is it still free, I think? And then they have a paid version.
So the Snore Lab app is free, and it gives you 3 nights worth of data, and then it starts to delete the oldest night, and it records every other night. If you want to pay the $5, then it allows you to record as much as you want. Yeah, so I encourage a lot of patients to just take the free app, get 3 nights of data, especially if they don't have a bed partner that tells them how much they snore, and it gives them a somewhat objective metric about how much they snore.
Yeah,
I do like that.
And we use it for titrations.
Have you used Drowsel or anything?
No, I am familiar with Drowsel. I haven't personally used it, but that's another app. You as a dentist can sign up for that. You can have access to it with your patients. I mean, sometimes when I have conversations with dentists, they go, they seem like, oh my gosh, all these new watches. Better's a new pulse oximeter you can purchase for your home. I think dentists sometimes feel this is a threat. This is all good because it's raising the awareness so that the patients are saying, hey, I may have a problem here. So I really believe, I mean, I love our screener. Thank you for, putting the slide in here. And we use it a lot, but I think 10 years from now, the awareness is going to go up so much because of the wearables and all the things that are going on at home. While we're talking about this, the only other thing I can mention on this, we're going to be talking about titrations and monitors in a little bit, pulse oximeters and things like the Gym Pro. I think you've mentioned you use, and we use one called Patient Safety sometimes too. Those are new technologies. The high resolution pulse oximeters have gotten so much better than they were. I don't know how many years ago they've been around, but say 7, 8 years ago they weren't around. And we can hand those to the patient who's kind of in denial and saying, I don't think I have a problem. Well, let's just send this monitor home with you. I think the Gym Pro, and I'll shout out, I think I saw Jeff on here today. We can measure bruxism. We can say, hey, you go home.
And while you're measuring the bruxism, what's happening next door is you see this drop in oxygenation. You see, so right away you say, but by the way, not only are you bruxing like we suspected, but look at all this oxygen data we have, and that's fantastic.
Yeah, and with the controversies about whether dentists can manage home sleep testing, which we're not going to open that can of worms too far today, but there's no reason you can't use a pulse oximeter. Look at that and have that help influence a patient's decision to move on with further diagnostic treatment. So
and there's no wrong answer here, but I personally do not use like oximeters or using the Gym Pro or any of the other testing mechanisms at the screening stage. Right. I let the screening stage be to me that I've used something like this, and I'm trying to motivate the patient. Wrong language, nobody's going to like this, but I want to close them into doing a sleep test. That sleep test could be with me. I could order it up. I'm in Michigan. Or I could send them to my local sleep physician. Either way, I'm trying to close that patient's behavior into the next step. I tell them when I explain to them what sleep apnea is, you're at high risk, et cetera, but we don't know for sure till we do a sleep test. Right. And so here's what I like to do. And I get their affirmation. We have a very, very high closure rate into that. And so whether it's sleeptest.com, whether it's sending to the sleep physician, all the different modalities we've got available to us, I want to close them into a sleep test if they're at high risk from screening. So the screen's got to be effective, and that's what I like about that third-party verification.
Yeah, thank you for that. Someone asked what the apps are for the patient phone. So Snore Lab's the free one, Snore Lab. And I think that's a great one. We use it for titrations. I talk to my patients about it all the time. And then Drowsel, I said that right? Is the one that's a service. A little expensive, a little pricey. But you can sign up for that as a dental office, and then you can just talk to the people there, and they can tell you how that works and the help in the screener patients. And there's a lot of other ones out there, and they're popping up. So I think that world is is all open. It's just going to explode. Or so apps are getting so much easier to make, and I think we'll see more and more of those. So. And while we're talking about this screening application, an EMR, a lot of people, what is an EMR? It's electronic medical record. And EHR, there's differences. We could go into all the detail. But what an EMR does is help organize patient flow and patient data. Okay,
Yep.
And it does that digitally. So instead of doing this with paper workflow, it digitizes and makes the workflow better. So as you were showing with the screener, what that does, the workflow is easier because the patient fills it out, they're interactive, and then we have a button on there we can push to even order a home sleep test if the patient is indicated for a home sleep test and agrees to it and so forth. So
see, and that's what I was gonna say. As you were saying, it's digital, but you know what? I could go into Google Docs, and I could write up my SOAP notes in Google Docs. I could write letters to physicians in Google Docs. I could keep my patient records there. Fantastic, great stuff. Because it's much more than what our software, our practice management software, is usually going to allow us to do. I could do that, but it's not integrated. And the big difference is it digital? Yeah, it's digital, but it's still going to take a lot of time, effort, and energy on my part. Once you integrate it with the software that you're using to manage your patients, you literally press a button, a template pops up. You put in 2 or 3 little data points. It looks like a letter, and off to the physician it goes. That kind of EMR recording and communication, that is seamless. That's what's fun. And we couldn't do that before.
And it would take us a lot longer, and we wouldn't be as efficient. So thanks for recognizing the need for this. We're continually improving our systems with that as well. And the communication, I meant to go look. Rich, my partner, Rich Drake, who's a founder of DS3 with me, he had a slow month. I was talking to him on the phone earlier today, and he only did 60.
Let's go back a slide for a second, because I think there's some patient data available there that we don't want to have.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that it's not blotted out there. Sorry about that.
Oh, you gave the slides to me, I think. I didn't.
Yeah, but something got changed because I had the patient's name.
Oh, geez, maybe it got the little blot. So we'll go through that one. Thank you for noticing that.
It's just a letter, so it's just a patient letter to a physician.
But I was talking to Rich today, and he had a slow month. I think he said he only did 60-something devices in December, but he's
what?
Yeah, that was a slow month in December, but he'd done 15 or what is that, like 20 since first of the year already, or 30 since first year. But anyway, he did, I think last time I looked, like 5,000 letters in less than a year's time, because that's what you're required to do if you're going to treat patients, because you got to communicate with all the physicians, and that builds your practice. And that's what the next slide is, which we're not going to show you. That takes for that, but talks about how we can make those that communication, first of all, not be costly because it does it through digital fax, but then also with templates that clicks a button and takes a letter that would take you 10 minutes to write down to 20 or 30 seconds. So.
Now we still have have sort of an analog process for writing those letters, and that the letters are generated automatically through the software, and we do use your software. But any of the software platforms are going to let you do that. That's fine. But the analog part that we still have is, we work with several different sleep docs, and we work with probably about maybe 11 or 12 different general practitioners in dentistry, and they're going to all need certain letters back, and every one of them wants to, not all of them, some of them are the same, but many of them want different points of information, different times that they want to contact. The dentists want a little bit more communication than physicians do. Physicians want to know that the patient's in treatment and when they're done. So most of them want 2 letters. The dentist will tell them we're in treatment, we've delivered the device, and we're sending it for follow-up, whatever it might be. But so we've got a manual list of showing what each dentist and each sleep physician wants in terms of communication. Sometimes we add a PCP in that, sometimes we add a cardiologist. Honestly, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you that could be it is on a spreadsheet. But even though it's on a spreadsheet that's digital, we really look at it and use it manually. And so we do still have a manual step where we decide which communication, which one of our referring doctors is going to get. But writing those letters, oh my God, that would be horrendous. I could not imagine doing that.
The only step we add, I agree with that, and when it comes to how we get our patients tested, we keep in mind what the preferences are for the physicians we work with. Sure. Here in Florida, sometimes people go away for the summer. And so if the treatment drags out for some reason, or getting restorative dental work, then we certainly want one in between, just to let them know, hey, we haven't forgot about your patient. The treatment's just being delayed for a little bit. So minimal 2 letters, and then sometimes 3 or more, depending on the situation. So
For sure.
Want to talk about testing? I think that's what this
Sure.
slide is. I got my camera covered it up.
Sure. So, you know, there's 2 basic pathways, and so you're down in Florida, so you do a lot of referral to the physician for testing if you've got somebody that's been screened, because with Medicare patients, they've got to be those tests have to be ordered up by a physician, interpreted by them. They all have to be interpreted by them.
Yeah, that was one.
But we still get to do probably. Again, maybe 60% of our patients, we order up the test. And so, you know, we use sleeptest.com for the initial test and for the follow-up test. And then we'll use something like, we've got a Z machine from General Sleep that we use for titration, as well as the pulse oximeters. It just depends on the patient. You know, sometimes we use a pulse oximeter, and we'll talk about titration in a minute. Sometimes we'll use the Z machine. It just depends on whether or not we think we need some additional information, if we need more follow-up. I can't interpret the test. I can't read a diagnostic result from it, but it really gives us a great idea of where we're going. But the testing, what's neat about having a software platform and an integrated digital solution, if you will, is that we can literally, and you mentioned it earlier, we can press a button while the patient is sitting there. Literally, while the patient is sitting there, we order up a sleep test. When the patient said, yep, let's go ahead and move forward, we order up the sleep test while they're sitting there. Can you imagine having to stop, drop, and roll, you know, like you're putting out a fire and communicating something or sending a letter, having the patient call, somebody call back? So having that inside the software is great. Now, complete the circle, that same sleep test comes back, and I'm sure you've got more than one platform that you can do this with, but you load it right into the software.
Right.
And as I told you earlier, as we were going on the air, I got an alert today, said sleep test is back. I was able to read it while I was sitting in the back of the room during a program. We had some meetings today, and I stepped out, calling the patient and reviewing the sleep test with them. They had a fantastic result. An AHI of about 27 had dropped down to 0.9, and we had a great result, celebrated with the patient, came back in the room, nobody knew the wiser. So what an excellent way to handle that testing, follow-up testing, making sure that the physician's in the loop, and you've got all the documentation right there in the software.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll mention, most of the home sleep testing platforms are moving to cloud-based as well, and so the future for this looks really bright as a company that develops, you know, software and cloud-based systems. We're updating our API to the latest API over the next few months. We've been working on it for 2 years, but we'll be able to plug in easier to these new platforms, because as more and more of the platforms, I know that one of the things we like working with, you mentioned the Z machine. I have one of those as well. Use that all the time. I like it because it's inexpensive. It does sleep, does multiple nights, but also their platform where you upload the data is cloud-based. And I know in the future it's going to be easier as we add more companies in to being able to bring the data right into DS3. And it's also works when you have multiple offices, like I did too, that you can access the data from anywhere and so forth. So I think the future is really looking good. The home sleep testing devices are getting smaller. They're getting less cumbersome. They're getting less expensive. They're doing multiple nights as the technology's advancing. Now, it used to be you could do one night, and that was it. It wouldn't hold enough data except for one night. And now with titrations, as we will talk about in a little bit, doing multiple nights is absolutely essential, I think, to saving time and being efficient doing this.
Yeah, I think we're going to see, and you mentioned smaller, easier to use, easier for the patient to wear. I know that some of the companies are looking at really small and simple solutions, and you know, the complications sometimes with patients having to administer their own tests on an HSAT, still far more comfortable for a patient than going in for a polysomnogram and going into I mean, we've all done it in part of our training, but sleeping in, I sleep great anywhere, but sleeping in with all the tags hanging off you, it's just bizarre. It's just, how do you get a decent, how does that represent a typical night's sleep? That's a challenge.
It does. And someone's asking where you get the Z machine. It's from General Sleep.
Yep.
And if you want to just put another question in, please send me contact. One of our MSC people will be happy to do that. And there's a lot of good home sleep testing companies out there. It's an up and coming one. We still use WatchPats and other ones around here too, because it's you talk about something non-invasive. It just goes on your hand. It doesn't take up a lot of you don't have quite as many wires. But I'm telling you, the more has changed in that area, technology-wise, in the last 5 years. as much has changed there as anything. The technology is better. I think we'll talk about pulse oximeters in a little bit. Those have certainly gotten better and easier to use, and they hold more nights data because of storage. So a lot of questions keep coming in about impressions. So I think probably one of the most exciting things are digital scanners.
Well, I'll start with the mea culpa because, even though I lecture and teach for Prosomnus Sleep Technologies, and they're a highly digital, precision engineered CAD/CAM kind of company, and the types of devices they make are cool. I take a polyvinyl siloxane impression putty wash technique, and when you have the kind of accuracy that they demand, you've got to have a very accurate impression going in. And so until I get my scanner, it's a putty full set with a little layer of saran wrap over the top and then a wash, and that's the kind of LSU impression you get down there. That's a national championship impression if I ever saw one. It's LSU colors. But the idea, thank you for laughing at that. Yeah, Kentucky and Michigan didn't make it this year. Yeah. So the idea being that however we're going to take the impression, however we're going to take the bite registration, the more that we can streamline and eliminate the errors in that process, the more effective our therapy is going to be, the more comfortable it's going to be for the patient. So from an impression standpoint, I think scanning is a heck of a lot more comfortable. I just can't wait to make the jump to scanning. I just had to wait till I found the right platform, the right cost. Everybody's making the same, and I don't practice full time, so it's harder for me to make that kind of investment. And then my daughter, who can be very well, she's excited as heck about doing it, and she'll take over those duties for me because right now I still do a lot of the impressions myself. It's not the most effective way, but she's anxious to take those over. The bite registrations are tricky because it doesn't matter, again, what technique you're using. If you're using a pharyngometer or if you're using an aerometrics and you're doing some sort of a snore test, and I use a snore test, I go horizontal, then I add some vertical. And again, I'm not concerned about how you're doing it if you're having successes, but you can see a blue bite fork down there. That's a Great Lakes bite fork that they made for us that's 3 millimeters thick, not just in the incisal area, but also in the posterior, because that's the clearance we need for a Prosomnus device, and I use a lot of those. That's a manual bite fork. But if I was taking a digital bite, which would save me a step, I wouldn't have to put goop on it. And so they used to make an actual digital bite fork, which allowed you to put a little bit of goop in 2 corners in the back, and then one little piece up in front in the incisal area. But one time we realized, a friend of mine, Kevin Kwishin, came by from Spear, and we were doing some scanning in the booth at the ADSM, and he said, "Why are you using goop on those?" Exactly. And I said, because we always use goop. And he said, "I've been doing that for the last couple of years, and I don't use any goop." So then we did 30 more scans of patients' bite registrations with no goop, and they all went just fine. So now I would just take a bite fork, and you can imagine buying a autoclavable bite fork from Great Lakes Orthodontics now, if you're using a George gauge, or not bite fork, but an autoclavable George gauge device, buying a box of bite forks and probably never buying anything else again and taking all the bites you'd ever need the rest of your career. It's crazy how easy that would be. I'm joking. I want a metal bite fork, for God's sakes, that I can autoclave. And then you've got, if you're using the pharyngometry and you're using the screener and you've got that person in the vertical position, then you're bringing them forward a little bit and you're finding that spot. Once I've got them on the screener and I like the spot I'm in and I put a little notch in, I don't need the handle. I don't need the bite fork. I don't need goop. Just scan up or scan lower, get some hard and soft tissue and bring those arches together. Works fantastic. Some of the systems are a little bit more forgiving, that we tested, we looked at. You can put a little bit of goop on the bite fork as long as it's not too tall. If it's just covering the incisal edges of the teeth like it should, great. If it's too tall, carve it back with a little Bard Parker knife. But recording that is fine. And you can also see a Matrix Plus there, and you're familiar with that system. That's a neat system too. But again, at the end of the day, it's taking a bite. Once we find that treatment position where the patient's responsiveness was good, record that. Well, let's just scan, and there you go. So it's so simple to just move from the analog to the digital. And now that case goes out today, it's in the lab's hand today, not in 2 or 3 days after shipping. Man, I love that. I love that.
Well, I can speak to this for just a moment. First of all, my disclaimer is I love technology. I helped start a software company. But I tell you get technology and it makes you want to go to work in the morning. And
fun stuff.
When I got a Cyric machine years ago, it was a lot of work at first, but then it paid off. This scanner, of all the technology I bought, it was probably the quickest to integrate into a normal workflow and to see the value of it. Because I've had CVCT, the scan, like I said, Cyric, back when it was not Cyric 3. back in the old days when it was a whole lot of work.
Red cam, blue cam,
all that stuff.
All that kind of stuff.
And so, and then computerized. We went from non-computers to computers. Been through all the technology. This is something you should not be afraid of as a dentist, because
Absolutely.
it does. I mean, I tell you, all you need to do is hire a millennial. We have a 21-year-old in our office, and she picked this up. I mean, she didn't even have a dental background, and she's scanning people after the third or fourth one better than anybody in the office because she's just used to computers. And so if you're not afraid of computers, it does it as quickly as taking impressions. We got ours a year ago, and the question comes up. I'll tell you which one I have at the CareStream 3600. I don't know which one you're getting, Mark. The question was if you want to share it and go ahead.
CareStream 3700, just so you know.
Oh, you got to one-up me. Really?
Uh-huh.
I know that Rich had the CareStream. He liked it. Look, there's other scanners out there. They all seem to work well. You want one that does
they all work.
full arches. Patients freak out about this. They're like, wow, this is so incredible. And we've gotten it down to where it takes a little less time than impressions. Not a whole lot. It's not totally a time saver.
But it's close enough to be a wash.
It's close enough to be a wash, but you never have to redo them. So if you consider remakes, it's far less time than impressions. The patients love it. They can take a break if they need to, and they can see it on the screen. And then back to the bite. I did that from the get-go. I'm like, why are we using this goop? And we've had.
You went to that early.
I never used the goop. I'm like, it didn't make any sense.
That's
to me.
great. That's so smart.
We've done hundreds of devices. Never ever used the impression material. We just put the bite in. You marry the devices together. We've used it for over a year now. We got it a year ago. So we got it in 2018, the end of 2018. And the bites are always, right on. And the other thing is you can look at them on the screen. And if something looks amok, then you go back and you have an opportunity to check that bite. And and what you said I want to emphasize is that it saves time because now you hit a button and the lab has it.
Yep.
The lab has it.
I'll tell you, it also saves time down the road when you get breakage or you get lost or something happens.
There it is.
You press the button, you make another one.
You make another one. So, look, I'm not a salesman for CareStreams. I don't get anything if you buy one from them or anybody else. But I can tell you this is the best investment because the way I looked at this is the number of impressions I was doing, how much the materials cost me, how much this capital cost was. There's a line where it breaks even. And we're over that line to where this is actually saving us money in our practice, and it's working well. So if you're looking at technology, that's what we're talking about tonight. That this is something you can tell I get excited about it. Our cases fit better. We have less delivery time. There is one learning curve. Different scanners have different tolerances, and like even working with ProSomnus, when we first got them, they were all a little tight. We worked with ProSomnus after about 8 or 10 devices that these are a little too tight. They dialed that in,
make the adjustment.
And they make an adjustment digitally on their end. I don't know exactly what they do, but man, they drop right in. So you may have a little, because they are so precise and everyone's just a slight bit different.
Right.
It really is. This is one of the things that I can tell you I'm excited about. You're going to love it when you start actually using this a little bit more and when you get it in your practice.
I believe you, and I listen to Richard talk, and John Carollo's a friend of mine. He's got a CareStream, and so I get really excited, and I think maybe, again, you're right. Doesn't matter which technology. They're all great. ProSomnus can tell us how many different scanners they've got, and they're all working fine, so there's no preference there, but I'm getting the CareStream 3700. But I'm actually, to be honest with you, I'm a little scared because my devices, like you, I've worked out with ProSomnus how I want the devices, and so they're dropping right in. I delivered 6 devices. They were 4 IAs and 1 PH, so it was 22 arches on December 30th, my last work day of the year. And all but 2 arches dropped right in. And the 2 that didn't were 2 lowers on a patient who was a hygienist and a friend of mine. Of course, and I had to go back and just, totally. It should have been a family member. It would have been a disaster. But I had to go back and just, tree-burr, tiny bit of adjustment down at the cervical and the posterior teeth on both of those arches. Went back, put them in, they were fine. And you just can't do that. And so now I'm afraid because there's going to be a new learning curve with the scanner where they're going to be too tight or too loose or whatever it is. And with ProSomnus, it's very particular. I mean, all the advantages are worth it, but it's very particular because if you want a device that drops in easily, you just don't wrap the distals of the second molars, maybe don't make them fit at all and just put 4 ball clasps, and those things will just pop in all day long. But you've given up so much more things in terms of tooth movement and open contacts, it's just not worth it. So but I'm a little scared about the learning curve. I really am. So,
you'll do great,
but I'm anxious to get it.
You'll do great with it. One last thing I'll mention on this is one thing I've asked people is, state boards, is an assistant allowed to take impressions? Maybe not. Most states, they don't regulate. There's nothing on there, so your assistants can take this. And even
Totally.
if it's questionable, they can do all the work and you can go in and finish it in 10 seconds. And
That's
so
right.
you can delegate it.
You could do the arch, and you can come back and do the crown prep, and then replace and stitch the prep in.
Absolutely.
Right?
So you can delegate impressions, essentially digital impressions. When you couldn't do that, in Florida, you couldn't do that. So now that was something I was doing. Now a team member's doing it, and it's fantastic. So I don't want to beat that up anymore. I see someone says they have the Trios. I hear that's a fantastic one too.
I do too. I hear great things about 3Shape.
I don't hear anything bad about any of them. There's bells and whistles, and I think the return on the reason I went to Kerosene, someone asked here, the main reason was the lack of ongoing cost was important to me from a ROI. I didn't if I do enough impressions,
You and
it's
I
going to pay
think
for
the same.
Yeah. So if there's a line there with
Exactly.
the number of impressions I'm doing per year, it was no brainer because it was iTero works great too. Someone's saying. So I think these are all great. And now what's cool is we send this digitally to the lab, and now they're digitally making the devices. And this is your area of expertise, but I can tell you this is really exciting stuff. When our patients see these things, I wear a ProSomnus device. I should have grabbed it from my bathroom. Most every night I have 100 devices I have laying around my house, but because I tried them all over and I have apnea, so I wear one. But they're so small. They can be made so much thinner because of the density of the material. The totally digital workflow. That's not there for all labs, but at some point we'll not be making any models.
It's coming for everybody.
Yeah. And so I'll let you. This is something you know more than I do about. Talk about the exciting.
So with ProSomnus, they came out with the iterative advancement, which is very different because instead of having some sort of a screw or something you turn on the side, you'd actually trade out an arch and put a new arch in, and that's how you go forward a millimeter. Or 2 or 3. And so that was very, very new for everybody to consider. So that's still the flagship brand, the IA, the iterative advancement. But the precision Herbst or the continuous advancement is a dorsal. The precision Herbst is a Herbst. They're all the same platform. And that's what I'd want to emphasize about digital manufacturing. So SomnoMed has a new Avant, and that's got a digital platform. And then they have a soft liner they put in it. So they take a little different twist with it. You've got Panthera out there. We've lost Narval in the United States. You've got Panthera, which is a printed nylon. But what you've got here is a whole change in how the manufacturing is going to accomplish. And so I could sit here and talk tonight about how advantaged I think it is to have ProSomnus, and it's a little bit more precise. And you're right, they are smaller than anything else. Work great, very strong, great warranties. Doesn't matter. In 3 to 5 years, everybody is going to be either milling or printing some sort of a device. And my guess would be in 5 years, we're not going to be looking at polymethyl methacrylate and nylon resins. We're going to be looking at some material we don't even know about yet. Some polymer or some material that's stronger and smaller and it has just the right amount of flex and the right amount of strength and rigidity. And those are going to be materials that are out there today. We've seen them, but the cost is so prohibitive that your devices be $12 or $15 or $2,000. But as that cost comes down, like it does with computers and pizza and other things, we'll see that move into the dental space, and we'll see a continued advancement in what software and precision engineering and milling and printing can do. Think about how we had porcelain fused to metal crowns in dentistry for so long, hand waxed, sprued, cast, cleaned up, opaqued, porcelain built up. Right? Now, computer aided design, milled, centered, sent back, maybe some stain and glaze, maybe not. Slap that puppy in the mouth. I had one submitted last week. And so that's the same kind of evolution we're seeing here. Digital film versus print film, there's so many examples. What we think of now as a phone in our hands is a walking computer. So we're going to continue to see the kind of advancements. I would draw your attention to that one picture in the corner with the little dotted lines around the perimeter of the arch. One of the things that you can do if you're really doing precision engineering and not just milling, because you could just mill the platform and put soft reline material in, or not wrap the distals, and you're going to have more problems with tooth movement. Or you can put a strap in, and Avant's got a neat design. I love what they do, but the strap stretches, and their study talks about that. So, those are trade-offs that we have. And so if you say, well, what can ProSomnus bring? Well, it's this idea that I can correct the arch form on one side and the arch form on the other. If they went in 2 different directions, I can correct them so that the advancement, if it's a Herbst arm or if it's a jack screw and we've got a propulsion device like a continuous advancement, a dorsal, I can make sure they're going in the same direction so one side doesn't go further forward than the other. You can't do that by hand. That has to be done in a computer, and this computer-aided manufacturing, this computer-aided design, this precision engineering across all of the types of devices we see is going to continue to evolve and really change the way we do dental sleep medicine. I'm going to tell you, this is the ticket, precision engineering. This is the ticket to medical devices that physicians are going to embrace to help us move past that bump we've got in the road where CPAP is king. And I think this is going to be critical, is the types of devices we use are going to be truly, truly critical. So I'm a huge fan of all this technology. Yeah, I'm wearing a Persona shirt. I do a lot of lecturing for them, but it's this whole arena of precision engineering and CAD/CAM.
Yeah, and again, today's advantages, I mean, tomorrow's advantage, I agree, and it's exciting. It really is.
Yeah, it's great.
But today's advantages are they're smaller and stronger and fit more precisely, and ultimately last longer, more patient comfort.
Think about the smaller, less protrusion, right? Because there's more tongue space, so I don't have to push them as far forward.
Absolutely, and
less side effects, less. Oh, it's so cool.
It is, and if there's a like I said, if someone breaks something, or then you can just you don't have to take new impressions. You just say, hey, make another one, or if someone gets a crown or something. By the way, speaking of digital, that's just a trick that I wish someone told me a long time ago, and you probably know this one. But the other thing is, you save these models. I don't save models now. I have digital scans.
Not at all.
So, but if someone needs a crown, then I tell them to tell their dentist to do a CAD/CAM replication crown. So, and if they don't have a model, now with my scanner, I can get those models printed by various labs. Will do it for. I don't have a printer. You can buy a printer. I just don't happen to have one. I print that model, send it to the dentist, say, here's the way the tooth looked before it broke. Send that to your lab. Tell them to make the crown look just like it. And with a computer, they can do that. And now my device fits perfectly. I don't have to worry because they got a crown on number 3 and number 30 that we got to start all over again.
That's a great point.
So
it's a great point.
All to do with the tonight's subject of technology. And then
very cool.
We're on to the titrating of this, and we've already hit on this a little bit, I think.
Yeah, we have. We've covered this up pretty well already.
HSTs we've covered. I just will mention again that high resolution pulse oximetry, really, like you said, green is good, red is bad. A couple of them out there have algorithms that look like this. It's the one we use quite often. It's patient safety, the SleepSat, very inexpensive in today's world. And I can give this to the patient for 2 or 3, 4 nights if they want to wear it. And we can see different positions and what that does with this pulse oximetry. And can, what I like to tell the doctors is, look, some of them don't want us doing follow-up sleep tests. They want to do it. So what we do is we say, according to the pulse oximetry, there's the best position. But Mr. Patient, you still need to go in for a sleep test because I don't know how well you're treated at the best position. The pulse oximetry will help me get to the best position. Now we need to do a follow-up sleep test, which we can do with our Z machine or WatchPad if we have it, or we refer them back to the physician for that. So I think we've hit that fairly a lot, and I want to move on and make sure we get to the billing part of this. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add about this is so this is all the digital interpretation of information that we can get from folks, and that's awesome. So there's still this quality of life conversation that you have with patients when they report without SnoreLab. They report they're not snoring. Their spouse likes being in bed with them again, or they feel more rested during the day. They wake more refreshed. So these quality of life subjective interpretations were always good and always useful, and still are today. But until I get a piece of digital information like the pulse ox, like the SleepSat, some SnoreLab information, maybe any of these kinds of things, use the Z machine, I've got some way of indicating that, oh yeah, by the way, not only are you feeling better, but your oxygen levels are telling me good stories too. That's critical. I have both parts, this subjective and objective, and objective, trying to put those two together.
One last comment on this because it comes up occasionally. So oftentimes we will do 3 nights and 3 positions, and then maybe a 4th night or 2 nights and 2 positions, and then the last night have the patient go without it again if we haven't had a recent baseline. I like to do that on the last night. I want to make that
good idea.
Not necessarily in the digital per se, but if you do it the last night, it's better than the first night because that first night may cause apnea and it'll cause inflammation in the airway, and it can throw off the remaining night. So if you're going to do what we do, we'll have them wear the SleepSat a couple of nights, 2 different positions or 3 different positions, and the last night go without it. Now we've got this data. That's uploaded in the DS3. I have it right in front of me. I can look at 4 nights, 1 baseline, and 3 positions. We know where their best position is, and then we just have to test them at that position once we titrate them out to that. So if that's confusing anybody, type in consult. We'll explain it more too, because that's a little bit more on titration than it is on digital. But what I want to emphasize is 5 years ago, we didn't have $500 pulse oximeters. That's what the sleep stat costs. That I can deliver to my patients. They can wear for 3 nights and cost me essentially nothing to really see where they are. So insurance and billing, oh gosh, so that's a Lisa from 4-Pillar Billing who works with us. She teaches a whole day-and-a-half course on billing, so we're not going to get into billing.
She's good. Yeah. So when we just got through with a survey of several of our customers, and so at Prosomnus, and the single reason that most doctors aren't doing more sleep is the headaches they have with billing. There's no question about it. Medical billing is a huge headache, and anytime I see somebody that wants to get into sleep, I try to remind them early that the key to that is finding the right billing partner, and just paying the rate that you've got to pay to have somebody else do the job. You're either going to pay your team to do it in hourly rate, or you're going to pay someone else to do it. It's a wash. It really is. And because the rules and regulations and you and your team, and Lisa, if you're online, you know how much we think of you because of the kinds of things you guys understand that we just can't figure out every day, that are changing all the time. I just learned in the last couple of days that Aetna is making some changes to some of their programs and using some PDAC guidelines on some billing systems and things like that, and how they're going to reimburse. And I'm like, holy crap, every day you're submitting claims, or somebody's submitting them on your behalf, and every day the rules and the regulations are changing. There's all kinds of states that are that the Medicare rules and guidelines are being adopted by some of the Blue Crosses, the Anthems and things like that. We don't have that in Michigan, thank goodness, but you just can't keep up with that. It's not like dental insurance. We figured that out. Plus, dental insurance stops at $1,200 or $1,500, so it's not really insurance. It's sort of a maintenance plan. This is the catastrophic coverage that we want. This is when a third party takes the risk for big numbers, catastrophic losses. Most people's deductibles are way higher than dental insurance. So dental insurance, easy to figure out, easy. Medical insurance, shoot yourself in the head. Got to have somebody else do it. So thank you for handling that.
Yeah, and on tonight's subject with the digital, how does the digital fit into that? Wow, this is one of the biggest advancements. Number one, the claims are filed digitally.
Totally.
And so they get reimbursed.
And where's the money go? Do you get a check? Do you hold in your hand? No.
It goes right to your account. And it goes quicker. But one of the things that we do at DS3 is we have an instant verification of benefits. And it's called instant eligibility check.
Okay.
You can click a button. You can know what someone's deductible is, how much of it's been met, what their co-pays are, and if the device that's E0486 is covered with their insurance. Now, it won't tell you the allowable amounts unless you have a contract with them and know that, but you can certainly tell from that with our systems about how much the patient's estimated out-of-pocket is going to be. And then when you're ready to file this, using a third-party builder, which I did for years before we started DS3, I had a mountain of paperwork I had to fax back and forth to them, and now with the click of a button, I file my claim, and the paperwork, all the data that's already digitally obtained for my needs for the patient, Epworth's, sleep studies, letters of medical necessity, things I need legally for me to treat this patient, the third-party biller has access to through the HIPAA-compliant cloud. And it just saves a ton of time, and then the data, the correspondence comes back so we know where they are at each step. So without that, it can just really – we're going to kill a bunch of trees, number one, and number two, it can really get bogged down. So, and I think this is going to get better and better. We're working on better integrations we're switching to a new clearinghouse, and then we're going to have better reporting.
You were talking about that earlier.
Yeah, better reporting, better communication. So, I mean, this is continually being improved. So look at that.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
We are winding towards the end here. I see we have some questions. We'll go back and make sure we got them all. Sure. Again, the 4 pillars: screening, testing, treating, billing. We sound like we've a broken record. We've been harping on this for many years. But if you want to do dental sleep in your practice and you want to come to one of our courses, I'll put those up again in a minute. Or if you're already doing this, you say, I'm not doing enough, then what are you missing here? You need a system and team members responsible for each of these. Are you not screening your patients? Because 1 in 4, 1 in 5 of your adults have apnea. So what are you doing wrong there? Are you not have systems to test them? Or maybe we're not talking to them well enough to get them tested? Is something in between those two? We don't know how to treat them. We don't know which devices to do. Or we're not getting paid for it. If you have systems for each of these, we will find you wildly successful. That's what we do through education, coaching, software, and support. So if you want to know more about what we do, type in consultation. We'll be happy to talk to you. We're not high pressure people. We want to let you know how we can help your practice grow to the next level. Or even if you just have a specific question, like non-related to this, but related to dental sleep, we'll take our time and show our value and show you, answer that question, show you what we know at DS3. So we'll just type in consultation if that's what you want. And I think I'll put those courses up. We talked about that earlier. If you want to secure a discount on those courses, just type course. You don't have to commit to which one, but at least you'll get a couple $100 off the course, which is a great value anyway for a 2-day course. I mean, the ones with the Mark teacher are more valuable because he's far better at this than I am, probably. But so I'm doing part of these. You're doing some of them. I promise you, you come to any of these courses, you're going to say that was worth taking time out of my life and my practice and for my family if you want to learn more about dental sleep.
It'd be good.
What questions do we have up there? I think the Symposium, I forgot to mention that earlier. Mark, oh, look, you're speaking. Good. You're going to be there, right?
You got a handsome boy in that picture.
This is our 4th year of putting on the North American Dental Sleep Medicine Symposium. We're getting close to sold out. It's really a huge attendance this year.
Great meeting.
Yeah, it's the second biggest dental sleep meeting in the country, and we're fairly certain of 2 days. It's all implementation centered, and you can see we have Steve Carsonson from the Pankey, a good friend of mine, speaking. Dr. Remmers, who is credited with one of the people that discovered obstructive sleep apnea.
Physician, actually, yeah.
Physician. Jameson Spencer, which is a TMJ, one of my mentors. And we even have a best-selling author for a keynote speaker, Ryan Holiday. So a lot of you have read a lot of his books. We're excited to have it. So if you're interested, contact us, and we will set you up with that meeting. There's a lot going on there, and we have something for free for anybody who's not subscribed to our magazine. So I think that's all I have on here. Last was the upcoming courses, and I'll leave that on there for a minute. Did you look at these questions? I know our team's been doing a great job of answering them. I love the tool time vibe of the webinar someone put in. I've only watched that show about once, but I think I get it. Look what a great job they've done. Which are the easiest to modify if a patient has a crown? That's kind of outside of what we're talking about today, but I can answer that. The ProSomnus is good because it's all acrylic. You can grind on it. You can add to it if you needed to. The trick that I mentioned is the key, though, getting this so you don't have to modify it. There's a material called thermocryl that you can use. Some labs do that. Dynaflex does that, and a lot of theirs are called AccuFit that you can reheat. So if someone's got a really challenging mouth and they're going to be having a lot of dental work done, then you want to use that material to start with. So I think that's the main answer to that. Do you see anything on here we didn't get to, or you're looking at the questions too?
I'm looking at them too right now. Yeah, your team did a heck of a job answering some of these. Holy crap, it's awesome.
From NDs, yeah, for
man, they're making my job easy.
I tell you, if you have anything else you want to ask, go ahead or we didn't get to, go ahead and type it in now. We have a couple minutes left. Again, you'll get your CE upcoming, and there's how you get a hold of us. I think there we go, DS3, if you want to. And again, if anybody wants a discount on the course, I see some people have typed that in. Leave that one up actually. And if anybody wants a consult, type that in. But I don't see anybody. Look, man, we just did a great job or something because our team did answering the.
And we've got 1 minute to spare. 1 minute to spare. It's all good.
That's excellent. Well, I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks in February. It's going to be a great meeting. If you do get a chance to come, I can tell you, you won't be disappointed in that meeting too. It's great networking. The meeting is not a real. It's more of like it's not so big that it's overwhelming. It's just a real family kind of a lot of country's best dental sleep dentists will be there, and the people that we get to talk and
good vendors too. Really good vendors.
Good vendor Jason Tierney, who manages the meeting for us. He's really good about getting speakers who speak about practical things. Each one, you should be able to take something and go back Monday and use it in your dental sleep practice. So
Absolutely right.
you'll walk out of each one going, yeah, I didn't just get one pearl. I got a list of things that's going to help me there. So I'm excited about it. It's a lot of work on our part, but on our team's part. For those of my team that are on here today, thanks for all your hours of work already on that, and thanks in advance for the hours you'll put in. So I don't see any other questions coming in.
We're good.
Look at that. I mean, right on time, Mark. You are phenomenal. You had the right amount of slides, information to get us through this, just like, right on schedule. So I've really enjoyed it. I don't. Do you have anything else to bring up or add, or?
No, I just appreciate these opportunities. You and I both feel the same way about dental sleep medicine. We want more people to be doing it. We want them to be doing more, and just raise the tide for everybody, and everybody wins. So that's all good. It's an important concept for us all to be paying attention to. That's for sure.
And if you're come to our meeting, stop by, say hi to us, say hi to Mark, go by the ProSomnus booth. I didn't really get to adequately mention that ProSomnus is really one of the most progressive companies out there. I really feel every time I interact with your company there, Mark, that you work with, that they're not just trying to sell a product. I mean, I think we all, you go to work every day, you want to help your patients, you want to make a living.
For sure.
But we also want to do something worthwhile. And the meetings you all have, the customer service, what do you call them? Not the member meetings.
Technical service reps.
Yeah,
Yep.
to where we
Voice
all get together and try, how do we make this product better? How do we make dental sleep better? I really believe the leadership there has got the best interest of the dental sleep community at hand, not just their own company. And I enjoy working with you and ProSomnus.
So it's interesting you say that. So thank you. And we do tend to listen to our voice of customer quite a bit. So next year, or this year, I keep thinking of this as next year. This year, 2020, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to have a users meeting, and so it's going to be open to all of our customers and clients, and it's going to be in San Francisco. And we're really going to have a networking experience later in the year. We're going to be talking about how do we change physicians' viewpoint on oral appliance therapy, on ProSomnus therapy. How do we get more physicians to understand that this is an alternative that they should be embracing and considering? So we know that that's going to drive significant change. That's really, they control $2 or $3 billion worth of prescription for CPAPs on an annual basis, and we do maybe $200 million worth of oral appliances. So 2 or 3 billion, 200 million dollars. It's a huge change in quantum size. We're 5 or 10% of the obstructive sleep apnea therapy. So switching that kind of metric on what's more effective is going to be important. So that's really what this conference is going to be focused on. So it's going to be kind of exciting.
Well, again,
a little different.
It goes back to
You'll be there.
I have to turn my phone off here. It goes back to the company caring about the industry as a whole, and I'm excited to be there.
Sure.
And thanks again for your support, and thanks for taking your time. And don't go put it all on red while you're there. Save a little bit.
I won't.
He's out.
Go out for a little dinner tonight with my wife. It'll be kind of nice.
All right.
But Red, you think I should put it on black? Put it on black?
But don't put it on anything. Just keep it in your wallet.
All right, good.
That's the safest bet. Put it all on dinner.
All right.
Thanks again, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
it's always
you,
good working with you, man.
We'll see you at the next one.
Thanks for coming.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.